Into this view. Oh, not that one. We want not that one. Got to be one more minute there. Hang on. Yeah, it takes like a few seconds just to hit, and then it'll be good. YouTube is the slow one. There we go. All right, I'll grab that. Copy. Boom. And we are up. All right, Tim, I'm just going to hit the music and we're going to go. It's the long version. Welcome to the Everyday Sniper. You got Frank at Sniper's Hide, and we got a special live. We're getting ready to use the Hide TV resources the best we can. And so I have Tim Parkhurst from the Scout Sniper Association and from the Heritage Foundation. He is at, what is it, the VFW Veterans Convention?
Yeah, it's the VFW National Convention in Columbus, Ohio.
Nice. And so Tim's on with us, and he's going to talk Heritage Foundation, Scout Sniper Association, the War Memorial for the snipers at Quantico, and all those things. And he's got a M40, was it A6 behind you? Don't forget to hit the mute. You're muted.
Yep, there we go.
Yeah,
Yep.
there you are. Yeah, go ahead, Tim. Welcome to the podcast again, and welcome to the live. You're using the new Hide TV live system as well as the podcast, so we're here playing with new toys.
Yeah, man, this is awesome. I appreciate you having me on, brother. It's always good to be with you and to see you. It's a little crazy here. I'm in the middle of the exhibit hall at the Columbus Convention Center, and as you can see, I'm actually sitting in the T-Mobile booth. They were kind enough to let me use their Wi-Fi, or else I wouldn't be able to connect. So I want to give a shout out to those guys for being nice and letting me log into their Wi-Fi. But yeah, I've been here since Friday, and VFW National Convention went all weekend, and it goes. I guess the convention itself goes through Wednesday, and but the exhibit hall here where I am that gets done on tomorrow. So I'll be done
Nice.
tomorrow at noon. Yeah,
It's
so we got a booth over here, and people have been coming by and checking out the concepts of the memorial and checking out this awesome raffle rifle that we got here, and it's been cool.
very cool, and I know everybody's been sharing the raffles around. I noticed it looks like the association has a nice social media presence now, and I'm seeing a lot of the heritage stuff online. I'm seeing a lot of the association stuff, like the shirts. We've been grabbing the shirts and everything. They're fantastic. We take them to the
Yeah.
races. You guys have been doing a really good job bringing attention to everything going on, and I see it's resonating.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. JT and the guys at SSA have been doing a great job over there, and we've been partnering with folks like Direct Action Apparel to come up with cool new T-shirt designs and things like that. Something besides just
Mhm.
just the traditional logo or whatever. Those are cool too, but some of the stuff DA Apparel puts out, and we got those Hawaiian shirts that I think those are from Savage Tactician.
Mhm.
Those are pretty cool. So yeah, a lot of good stuff, and yeah, whatever it takes to get people interested and supporting the cause. That's what it's all about.
Exactly. And what people don't realize in watching the video maybe or listening to us for the first time is like the Scout Sniper Association has been going on since the 80s. We have all the Forever Wars we've been doing currently, and everybody, there is no memorial to a fallen Scout Sniper of any flavor at Quantico. However, there's like what, four to recon, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a comparison game.
No,
We're not
no,
trying
it's
to
not,
compare
but it's just
ourselves.
an example.
Yeah, yeah, but that shows how much they care about their community and their brothers. That there are four different memorials in the Semper Fidelis Memorial Park devoted to reconnaissance Marines, and we've been around a lot longer than that. A lot of guys don't know that Scout Snipers were around in 1918 at Quantico, Virginia. We had a formal school. We had Marines serving as Scout Snipers in World War One as part of Fourth Marine Brigade, fighting in the major battles of the Great War to end all wars. And it's not taken away from any other community, but that's a long time. We got 105 years of history from the time we started back then until the Marine Corps disbanded the program in 2023. And it was a well-developed program over a long period of time. Yes, it came and went, because every time the conflict would end, they would get rid of the program, and there'd be no more Scout Snipers for a while. But then when the next war started, they'd bring us back again, and
Right.
they did that in World War II. We had a formal school on both coasts, one at Camp Elliott, California, and one at New River, North Carolina. And it was a formal program, directed and supported by Headquarters Marine Corps. And we just it's funny because we just had another 75 or so names added to our roster of guys who served as Scout Snipers back in the day,
Yeah.
and that came from a muster roll that we found. It wasn't a Scout Sniper platoon. It was a one of the early recon companies, and this goes back to recon's early history in World War
Hmm.
II. And in World War II, the Scout Sniper MOS was designated by 761. Right, that
Okay.
was the MOS. And if you graduated from the course at Camp Elliott or New River, you got that designation, and it was on the muster rolls, and you were listed as a 761. Well, Adam Blair, our vice president, he was going through a muster roll and he found this recon company, and like 75 guys had 761 after their name.
Right.
And so they weren't in a sniper unit per se, but they were all trained snipers. They all graduated from either New River or Camp Elliott. And so we just, and some of those were killed in action, right? So
Hmm.
that adds again to our roster of the Marines who gave the ultimate sacrifice. So we're adding numbers daily. I've personally added probably 10 names to the list in the last few months. Several of those were killed in action in different eras. One was War on Terror. How is it that we don't know today everybody that was a Scout Sniper that was killed in the War on Terror?
Right.
You know, and yet we're still finding names. I just found another name today. A guy came by the booth who was a Beirut era guy, and he gave us another name of a Beirut era Scout Sniper who was killed in action in Beirut.
There you, yep.
And and it's funny because these guys' names are all listed together in different news articles and things like that, and it's like, but you don't really know. Maybe they were just you know in the same battalion, but you don't know if they're a Scout Sniper or not unless somebody tells you.
Right.
You know, and so I just found out two of those names about a month and a half ago. There was the main attack on the barracks in October of 1983, right? But just a couple months after that, in December, I think it was December 4th, there was another attack on an outpost that killed a bunch of Marines, and several of those guys were Scout Snipers, and we had no idea.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
there was a heavy sniper war there. They were using the
Yeah,
snipers in Beirut because I came in immediately after, and so I
yeah,
had Beirut people around me, and they were absolutely like going to work in Beirut that way. Same thing in Somalia. My unit
yeah,
and my guys, when I got out, my guys all went to Somalia and were doing combat in Somalia. You won't find anything about them fighting in Somalia for one, two, and they were
yeah.
doing the neo-op and all that. So I'm really sincerely impressed with the work you guys are doing on the Heritage Foundation and digging into our history and expanding our history beyond the known. I can't it can't be it's just amazing the work you yourself and the others are doing to find dig up and get our history. So
Oh, I appreciate that. It's mostly the other guys. I'm just herding cats, you know. But Adam Blair, Steve Norton, you know, Tony Clark, and some of the other guys, you know, have all been pitching in on the research effort, digging through muster rolls, and that's really the drudgery. You know, it's the hard work. You know, just
mhm.
sitting there on a laptop, you know, getting on Ancestry.com and going through old muster rolls and just searching through, you know, paperwork after paperwork after paperwork, you know, going through all these lists to see if a number pops out at you, or some you know, comment in the
Right.
remarks section, whatever. And but yeah, guys are doing a great job, and we are making progress. We just the other day with those 75 or so recon Marines who were scout snipers, that put us over 3,000
Nice.
for for total scout snipers that we're aware of. Guys who either graduated from a course, a scout sniper school, or who served as a scout sniper. You know,
Yep.
the same kind of, you know, criteria to be a regular member in SSA. You know,
Yes, yes.
that's the criteria we're applying. You know, to add to our master list, and so we're over 3,000 now, and it's gonna grow even more, because I know World War I and Korea in particular, we're really shy
Yeah.
on names, and there's
Mhm.
a lot yet to be discovered. So when we start getting those, you know, it's really going to be, you know, adding a lot to our numbers.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And you know, it makes sense if you think about it. All of us, and I know I did, and a bunch of other guys, we go to recon school as well. So the recon guys going to sniper school makes perfect sense. And that's where, you know, this all ties in together when you're finding these guys that are in that non-traditional role or unit. And you know, it's funny because like I was at the race in Iowa the weekend and stuff. And normally you know, Laura wears the shirts all the time and she's always getting attention from wearing the shirts. And you know, guys are always asking her, well, were you a sniper? And it's like, well, no, I'm of course not, you know. And right, right. They're being but then I never
but I
say
might
any
know a guy.
yeah, yeah, I never say anything. So I'm sitting back and one, I'm not supposed to drink anymore, so I really don't. So I kind of sit back with my Arnold Palmer and just let her, you know, kind of talk NASCAR with people. Well, this weekend she was like, "Well, him," you know, and the dudes look at me and the questions were funny because they're like, Really? Really? Really?" So there's a lot of this stuff out there that no one will ever believe someone unless there's paperwork. You know, you got to have
Right,
receipts today.
right.
And you guys are
Yeah,
digging up receipts and you're finding it. So I'm sure there's a family member out there that said, "My grandfather was a sniper." And people said, "Sure, he was." You know, "My
yeah,
dad did this." Sure, he did. And they
yeah,
did. They just did it in a non traditional way. And we
yeah.
have
And we want to hear from those people.
right,
We
and
do. We're actively looking for family members who, you know, hey, my uncle served in Korea, and somebody said maybe he was a sniper or something, or you know, my dad was a Vietnam era guy, and I think maybe he was a sniper, you know, or whatever.
right.
If you had somebody in your family, whether it was your dad or your uncle, or maybe an earlier ancestor from back in the World War I era or something like that, we want to hear from you. You know, we'll
Yes.
help you do the digging and find out, even if it doesn't lead to anything. Even if it turns out it's not the case, that's okay. We'll still
Mhm.
help you do the digging and find out. You know, what did your ancestor do? You know, what did your dad or your uncle or your brother or your great grandfather do during his time in service? And you know, all that's important, but it'll help us answer the question one way or the other for us. But it also helps family out. You know, so we're
Right.
you know, perfectly willing to, you know, to have that conversation with folks and just keep digging, you know?
It's amazing. Like I said, the work you guys are doing just to dig into our history, it's not getting lost. And then, you know, once that memorial gets placed in there, that's going to bring more attention. And like I have to go down and look at it, but I don't know how Quantico is completely set up. Hopefully we can kind of insert of the stories because you and I talked about the stories of these guys because it's like today. You know, back in your and I day, we had a determined rotation and your rotation went a certain way, and then you kind of got back and you came in your rotations. Now, I jumped a rotation because of the Gulf, and so I did a back to back. But those guys didn't go home a lot like they do now. You know, you get the 9 deployment, you get the 10 deployment guys because they're like World War II, they didn't go home until the job was done. So you have to wonder
Right.
who
Right.
didn't go home and who was working all that time, and the story's lost because of it, because they don't come home and tell you
Yeah.
what they're doing. You know, the letters probably said very little. And so that's an important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's important to remember that in different times, even times that were, you know, you might think were relatively close to one another. For example, you know, you were a scout sniper in the '80s, right? You know, I was in the early '90s. Guys that served in the 2000s. You know, you'd think that that's all relatively close, but there are some significant differences between those time
Yeah.
periods,
Yes.
about the way Marines deployed, about the way platoons were organized and utilized. Um, you know, just even things like the attrition rate at school changed
Mhm.
over time. Hell, that you know, depending on who was the instructor, you know, and I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
so
Smith.
from class to class, you know,
Mhm.
the attrition rate was, you know, it could be through the roof one class, and then it could be, you know, almost no attrition because, you know, some general came down and stomped on everybody's ass and, you know, made them freaking, you know, make changes
Right,
to
we were
actually
almost
teach guys instead of
exactly
weed them out.
yeah, we were almost exactly 50% in my class. And then
Yeah.
my stuff jumped to the MAGTF. So I'm in the I was in the MAU that became the MEW, and then from the MEW, I got scraped off into a MAGTF. So unless you go hunt down the MAGTF and realize there was 6 snipers in the MAGTF, because they grabbed all the stay and us guys, and then they only took 40 combat Marines. Bravo Company was our backup, but they grabbed 6 of us because we supplemented force, and there was only 10 force guys. So they're like, okay, we could put 3 and 3. Now we got 13, and, we could do all this, and we can mix. Like Mark and myself were in one part of force. We were with 7 guys to make them 10. And then the other guys were put in together to make them 10. And that's how they went. So there was 10 and 10. And so, yeah, you like
Yeah.
stories like that get lost really easy. And now we go back to World War I and find out, these guys were on the front lines. They're doing stuff. What were they doing in World War I? Because
Yeah.
their tactics didn't get to our school. The Brits did.
Well, so what's interesting is, you know, you know, we're seeing how different things can be from, you know, from the '80s to the '90s or from the '90s to the 2000s. Yeah, how there are
Yeah.
significant differences, but yet there's distinct similarities, right? And one of the
Mhm.
really interesting things that we found is the absolute similarities from every era, from World War One to World War Two to Vietnam to the modern school after post 1977 that you and I were part of. Um, all of those eras, the the subject matter and the topics that were discussed and taught in Scout Sniper School were almost identical
Nice.
from the very beginning all the way through the present day. I mean,
Nice.
they were talking way, you know, some of it may look, you know, kind of hokey, but we have a copy of a book. It's in the Marine Corps archive, so it's not ours, but we've seen it. It was in the hands of a Sergeant Leslie LaValle, who was a sniper instructor at Quantico in 1918. He bought this book commercially. He went to a bookstore in 1918 and bought it, and it's called Scout Sniping, and uh, it was written by a guy who used a pseudonym. He called himself Periscope, you know, because back in the war,
Mhm.
uh,
They
all
use
the
the little
trench
ones.
warfare, the
Yes.
scopes and stuff like that, and anyway, so he wrote the book under that pseudonym, and we were all curious when we saw this book that was owned by one of our sniper instructors that's in the Marine Corps archive. and he wrote his name on the front cover in pencil, and he wrote copious notes in the margins of the book. Um, you know, obviously taking notes about how he was going to teach the class and stuff like that. He was using it as a textbook,
Right, right.
and we're like, well, who wrote this damn book? You know, and so we did some searching around to try to find another original copy of it somewhere. And I found a Militaria website, that just sells random stuff,
Mhm.
that's military related. And they had a listing online for one of these books for sale, but it turns out it had already been sold.
Got it.
And so I reached out to the owner of the website and I said, hey, I know you can't share, the buyer's information with me, but how about if you share my information
With
with
them.
the buyer and tell them I'm interested in learning more about the book? Would they reach out to me, right? So the guy did that, and a couple weeks later, I get an email from a lady in Canada, and I'm like, "Who is this?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah. So you were asking about the book." And to answer your first question, why did I buy it? Well, it's because it was written by my great grandfather.
There you
And
go.
I'm like, oh crap, yeah. And her great grandfather was Lieutenant Colonel Anderson. Pete Anderson is his
Mhm.
name. Canadian Army. He was in a Canadian militia unit that was one of the first ones to be activated in 1914 to go overseas for the war. And he was a big proponent of shooting, scouting, scout
Mhm.
sniping, sniper scout, whatever. He called it all
I
kinds of
bet you
things. The
if you look
terminology
him
was
up
all
too,
over the
he was
place.
a fan of the Rangers, Rogers Rangers and Darbies and all that.
Yep.
Yeah, I bet you the
Yep.
guy was like obsessed with the French and Indian War, and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and that's where that all came from. Think about this as well, which is hysterical. He used a fake name like we do online today. He's an officer and he's
Yeah.
out there as
Yep.
Periscope, exactly like we do
Yep.
today.
Yeah.
And it's
So
amazing.
what's funny is this guy.
Yeah.
So Pete Anderson was from Denmark, right?
Okay.
He was born and raised in Denmark. He actually did a couple years in the military in the Netherlands, I guess, before he immigrated to Canada as a young man, and then he joined the Canadian militia, became a Canadian citizen, and it was some time later he was a major um, in the Canadian militia by the time World War One happened, and his claim to fame really is that he was in the first Battle of Ypres in
Okay.
Belgium, and the Germans captured 5,000 Canadians, and he was one of them. And so his claim to fame, though, was he was the first Canadian officer to escape German captivity as a POW.
Of course.
And he made his way from a German POW camp all the way back across the English Channel on his own to England, and he was awarded the DSO for it. And that's like a high award,
Right, right.
and so he became famous that way. But before anybody knew who the hell he was already advocating for sniping, and he was pushing it up the chain of command that, hey, we need to be teaching our soldiers, how to be scouts and snipers and scout snipers and stuff like that.
Right.
Um, After the war, he wrote another book. So that book was published in 1918. After the war, he wrote another book called I, comma, That's Me. Kind of an awkward,
Right, right.
title, but it's like I, that's me, and it's his memoir, and it's a relatively short book, but he wrote that in the 20s, and he spends a couple of chapters talking about scout snipers,
Excellent.
and
And you see, this is
yeah,
so amazing.
you can buy both of those books today. Yeah, go to Amazon. You can find them both.
Even the original Scout Sniper one from the early?
Yeah, it's not the original; it's a reprint, but
Right, right.
it's the same book. Yeah,
Okay,
it's called
I'll
Scout
go look
Sniping.
for it. And it's Anderson, or is it under
Yep,
Periscope?
it's under Periscope.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah, and then the other one, I, That's Me, is under Lieutenant Colonel Pete Anderson.
I'm an Amazon junkie, man. I'll be on it. So for sure. But
Yeah,
this is, and you know what? This is so amazing that we are going back to individuals' history, and these people are awesome. You know what I mean?
yeah,
We can learn so
really
much.
cool stories.
Right. It's so awesome. It's so
Yeah,
amazing that all this stuff is working out so great. I mean, the whole concept that you came up with from start to finish and bringing this, and it hasn't finished, but kind of saying, "Hey, we need to do this the way you did, a couple 2 years, was it 2 years now, maybe a little more."
Yeah, it's been a couple of years we've been working on it.
Yeah, so and now we're at this point and you have all these people's history that are just great. And it's like this is what shaped us to today. When you look at the effectiveness, when you look at, that just the what we've done in combat over the years, that guy shaped it. And like you said, the doctrine hasn't really changed. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You can draw a direct line to these books and to these people today.
Yeah. In 1918 at Quantico, they were teaching obviously long range marksmanship with telescopic rifles, right?
Mhm.
They were teaching advanced map study and land navigation, individual.
Right.
And at that time, for an individual Marine to know land navigation was kind of a rarity. It was the lieutenant's job to do that,
Yep.
right? Uh, it was not normal for your typical private or PFC to be particularly good at land nav. Um, when Blackjack Pershing, the general of the armies for the American Expeditionary Force, he issued an order in January of 1918 that every infantry formation in the American Expeditionary Force was to have 6 snipers per company. And of course, the 4th Marine Brigade was part of the AEF, so they had to comply. That was applicable to them as well. And the order said that every infantry company will have 6 snipers per company. They're not to be organized separately. They're to be a part of the company and answer to the company commander.
Mhm.
They're to be equipped with a telescopic sighted rifle. They're to be equipped with a periscope. They're to be issued a compass, a map protractor, and there were several other specific things. He was very, very specific about what
Mhm.
these guys were supposed to work with. And so every infantry company in the Army and the Marine Corps from that point forward, that's January of 1918, that's before the 4th Marine Brigade ever saw combat, right?
Yeah.
The brigade didn't see any real combat until April. And so this was instituted several months before we saw combat. And the school back in the States at Quantico was stood up in March, April timeframe. And we
Right.
actually have the dates. Give me a second. We'll talk about something else in the meantime, but I'll look it up. We found out from a muster roll that had a couple different guys who were assigned temporary duty as students at Scout Sniper School, and the dates that they were gone on the March, April, and May muster rolls gives us the exact dates that the school,
School is gone. There you
the
go. You
first,
guys are genius, man.
yeah,
You know?
no, dude, we're not, but
Well,
thanks,
but you
thanks for
know how
that.
to connect the
But
dots for people, and you can say, look, he wasn't at his unit
yeah,
for 2 months. You know where he was? He was at a school that's not on the books that we didn't know about that existed. And
yeah,
how do we know? Because here they're talking about it, and here the guy is not in his, he's absent from formation, but he's
yeah.
authorized absent. And this is why.
Well, so
I mean, that's genius.
check this out. So there's a PFC Ibsen, right? Private Ibsen.
Hmm.
Private Ibsen. One of our board members is Steve Norton. Great guy. He's a Marine, not a Scout Sniper, but he's on our board because he's done a lot of archival research, and his thing is weapons, right? He is a contributor to a website called usmcweaponry.com.
Hmm.
And if you're into Marine Corps historical weapons, you need to go check that out. Those guys did a fantastic job of researching all the historical weapons that the Marine Corps has ever used. And there's a whole page devoted to the 1903 Springfield A5 Winchester version that was the Marine Corps sniper rifle in World War I. There's a whole web page
Hmm.
devoted to that. On that page, they found this out a long time ago. They just didn't really they didn't really kind of make the connection to the Scout Sniper community as
Hmm.
far as how it would interest to us until Steve joined our board. And then it's like, oh, well, I got this you might be interested in. And it's like, oh, wow, our hair's on fire. We're like, holy
Hmm.
crap, where did you find that? And but this thing about PFC Ibsen, they on their website have copies of a document that was where he was issued a rifle with a particular serial number. So it shows an actual 1903 A5 Winchester sniper rifle being issued to Private Ibsen for use as a student at Scout Sniper School, and then it shows him being qualified as a Scout Sniper and
Mhm.
continuing to maintain custody of that rifle. He keeps that rifle and
Oh,
he
from
takes it to
school
France.
on, right.
Yes, yes, he takes it to France with him. And so they have that record. You see the signatures of the two officers, the one who assigned him the rifle and the one who signed for his qualification as a Scout Sniper. And so their names are Captain, uh, let's see, where is it here? Leander Clapp,
Mm.
CLAPP, and Captain Emmett Skinner. And it's funny because all these guys, including Private Ibsen, they were all assigned to Marine Barracks Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, prior to going to Quantico.
There you go.
And yeah, yeah. So there's this really interesting dynamic with guys being in Cuba because that's where they had the longer ranges
Mhm.
before the ranges at Quantico were well developed. Um, a lot of people don't realize that Marine Barracks Quantico was brand new in 1917, right?
Okay.
So in early 1918, it was still pretty new, and they were still building facilities. They didn't have the long rifle
Right.
ranges
Okay, yeah,
built.
yeah, that makes sense, right.
Yeah, so it wasn't until the spring that they had their own long ranges that they could qualify on, the spring of 18. And but you'll see that PFC Ibsen qualified as a sharpshooter at Guantanamo Bay at the long range down there. And anyway, these two captains were also down there, but then Captain Skinner was reassigned up to Quantico and was part of the overseas depot at Quantico and oversaw the sniper
Right.
school apparently.
So now he knew
And
what was
assigned,
going on in Cuba and then took it to Quantico.
yes, yes. And so it's really interesting and kind of sad what happened with Ibsen. So he was with the 13th Regiment, right? So the 4th Marine Brigade went over in 1917 and was made up of the 5th Marines and 6th Marines and the 6th Machine Gun Battalion and all that, right? Um, but we formed other regiments that didn't really get into the fight as whole units. One of those was 13th Marines. 13th Marines shipped over to France in September of 1918. So the war's still going on.
Mhm.
And PFC Ibsen's record shows that he made it. He made it to France. But he died the day they landed in France of Spanish flu.
Oh, wow.
So he never made it to the fight. But if they were in France in late September, then I can guarantee you that some of his comrades from 13th Marines were combat replacements for guys that had been killed in earlier battles with the 4th Marine Brigade and probably fought later at Blancmont and places like that in October and November, right?
Yep, yep.
So we're
You're
100%
looking
certain
for
because
those people now, the replacements that filled in the blanks.
yes,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah. So Ibsen didn't go to school alone. There was a whole class of guys with Ibsen,
Right.
and most of those guys were probably in the regiment and probably shipped over on the same boat he did. And we just need to find out who they were and which ones of them actually ended up in 5th and 6th Marines as combat replacements.
There you go.
And so now you have guys who were not school trained, like John Henry Pruitt, who earned the Medal of Honor at Blancmont. He was not school trained because he was already in France in 1917, right?
Got it.
But he was assigned duty because General Pershing said you're going to have 6 snipers per company,
Right.
and the Marine Corps complied because we say aye aye sir and we follow orders, and that's what we do. And so a lot of those guys that were there from 1917 on were not school trained. But then you had these guys with the 13th Regiment that actually made it over there in September of 1918 before the war is over. And a lot of them probably saw action at Blancmont and other places.
And,
So,
we make fun of all the pogues and admin. We get stuck in H&S Company, and we're always giving them a hard time. But
yeah,
their work led to you finding all this. The fact that they document everything we do and
yeah,
everything's written down, and when we turn in a rifle, take a rifle. When we go here, come back. When we do, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there always is that argument with records because, like, Laura's error, a lot of the guys now have learned they just put in their own stuff. And so it's like,
Yeah.
well, if you don't put it in, nobody's going to put it in
Nobody else
for
is
you.
gonna. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so you have to figure there's a lot of these blanks out there, but at the fact that we still have the records, that the government and the military is still on top of that paperwork to this day, that you can go back in time that far and say Private Ibsen was given this rifle at this time and carried it
Yeah.
overseas to France. That would be you and I on a float. That there is a
Yeah.
record that you and I grabbed the rifle out of the armory, we got on a boat, we went across the Atlantic, and we landed in wherever we landed. We went to
Well,
Cadiz or something, and it's there.
yeah. Well, listen, man, it's pure magic that those records still exist
Right.
because in 1924, the Department of the Navy directed the Marine Corps to purge documents.
Okay.
And much of the documentation that we would like to have is gone.
Okay.
It was purposely destroyed. So, for example, graduation rosters from Scout
Mhm.
Sniper School at Quantico at the Overseas Depot, those are probably gone. Those were probably destroyed in the
Yeah.
purge. The reason we found, hey, how you doing? Got some fans here. The
Yeah, I'll let you go in a minute. I kept you 30 minutes,
no,
so
yeah,
we
my
can.
battery's gonna die in a minute anyway. But
Yeah, yeah.
but the purge, killed a lot of that information. But there was
Right.
still little snippets from other sources, uh, kind of like the thing with the sniper rifles, right?
Mhm.
We know the Marine Corps bought like 900 of these A5 Winchester sniper rifles, and we know that a bunch of them got shipped over to France, and we know that they were over there in 1917 with the 4th Marine Brigade, and we know that because we found documents saying that. We also found a letter from the quartermaster. It's from the headquarters of the American Expeditionary Force, and this is an order coming from Blackjack Pershing, ordering the CO of 5th Marine Regiment directly to give up 90 of his rifles. 20 of them were to be handed off like 2 days hence to some officer that's going to come by and collect them. And then the remaining, 70 were to be shipped to a quartermaster depot for use at a sniper school that the British Army was running for us,
Right,
for
right.
American servicemen.
Yeah,
And
which is great.
that was October 1917 in France. So the British Fourth Army was running that one, but we know the British First Army and probably some others also ran courses like that. So there's all these different training evolutions that were happening where some of the guys, maybe Corporal John Henry Pruitt did attend sniper training,
Right,
but it
right.
was run by these
Informal.
guys.
I just have a question in the
Yeah,
chat. Says how many were undocumented classified classes took place. So I have Andrew in the chat asking how many people did a course that was not on the books or was through someone else, where they said go to the Brit school right now, and you did 2 weeks with the Brits and it's not on
yeah,
any records.
that's a great question, man. We're still trying to get to those answers. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have enough clarity yet on, for example, the formal school at Quantico. We don't know exactly how many were in each class yet. We're working on
Right.
it. We don't know who specifically any of the Marines were that attended training in France. We just know that it was there, and we
Got it.
know that they used Marine rifles to equip them. So clearly, there were Marines in the course. And we think that some of those Marines that attended the early training in October, November of 1917 probably went back to the States to be instructors at Quantico.
Right.
And, some of them, anyway.
Well, you know how it
And
is. You went to
yeah,
that course with the Brits. You went on the front lines and survived. Now you're back in and you got 2
yeah,
years left. You're going to school. You're the teacher.
yeah.
And
That's
and
it.
and so
That's
that's
it.
probably a big part of it too. But
Yeah,
I'm gonna, because I know you're dying. Tell everybody how to find the Heritage Foundation, the Scout Sniper
yeah,
Association. Plug what you need to plug before you die. And I
yeah, man.
really appreciate this. Has been a great history lesson, a great conversation, and really enjoying it. But because I know
Well,
you've
listen,
got
as
limited
always, man,
time.
I really appreciate you having me on. I appreciate your advocacy. And, so the Scout Sniper Association and the Scout Sniper Heritage Foundation are separate but related organizations. So the Heritage Foundation is a legal subsidiary of SSA. Like you said earlier, SSA has been around since, for almost 30 years. And,
Mm-hmm.
we help our brothers and their families, and it's a great cause. And if you are a Scout Sniper or have ever been part of the community and you're not a member, you need to join. So scoutsniper.org. That's how you're going to find Scout Sniper Association, scoutsniper.org. And they're on all the social media channels. For the Heritage Foundation, we're at scoutsniperheritage.org. And, the whole reason we started that was because, we're all volunteers. We all have day jobs, kids at home, whatever. And, we knew that the guys running the association were already busy and
Mm-hmm.
barely had the association. How are we also going to take this on, So we thought, well, let's form a separate organization, get another group of, separate group of Scout Snipers to sit on that board and do the work. And so that's what we've got now. We've got two separate organizations, two separate boards of directors, all pushing towards the common goal of advocating for our community, digging up the history, documenting it, and getting that memorial built, to honor our fallen.
Right.
I'll just throw this out there, man. We've had, typically our community had maybe 300 to 400 active duty population at any given time, and that serves. That's true in World War II timeframe as well, Vietnam timeframe. Those numbers are still fairly accurate for the whole
Mm-hmm.
modern era, World War II on. World War I was an anomaly because there were more like 600 or 700 or 800, maybe. But for an active duty population of 300 to 400, to have half of that killed in action over the course of our history, half,
Right. Yeah.
right? That's big, right? That's a big number. It's not a competition. We don't want to have any more killed in action. But when we started, our numbers started growing and we were documenting this, we realized that, man, we're a much smaller community than a lot of communities out there. And we've surpassed some of those communities. The Navy SEALs claim that they've lost 144 sailors ever since, World War II when they had
the frogmen,
PDT and stuff like that. And, that's a lot. And that's a sacrifice. But man, we're, a group our size, we've lost almost 160 so far, and we're still growing that number.
Right, you're still counting.
Yeah, it's time, man. It's time to build that memorial, and it's time to honor their sacrifice. It's time for the families of those men to have a touchstone where they can remember their loved one as the Marine Scout Sniper that they were. Not just lumped in with the grunts, but my brother was an aviator. He was a Harrier pilot. When he went home at the end of the day, his kids, hey, my daddy's a pilot.
Yep.
I know for most Scout Snipers that had families while they served, their kids knew that daddy was a Scout Sniper.
Yeah.
And we're damn proud of being Marines first and foremost, right? That's a given. But at the end of the day, we were Scout Snipers too. And so this memorial, I think, is long past due. And we appreciate you helping get the word out. And hit us up at scoutsniper.org, scoutsniperheritage.org, and we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and Instagram. We got a cool raffle going on. I mean,
the rifle. We've been sharing the raffle around, everybody. So there's
it.
the rifle that's given away right there.
Yep,
I just want to buy it from you. Just let me have it.
Yeah, there's a few people that have offered us the money, but we got to run the raffle. And,
yeah, I get it.
You can work it out with the winner.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Second place prize is a really badass toolbox from Cornwell Quality Tools, and I'm sitting here in Columbus, Ohio. Cornwell Quality Tools is made out of American steel right here in America, in Ohio. They got their factory in Kenworth. So, pretty cool prizes, man. Check us out on the website and get your tickets. The drawing's November 1st.
Awesome, Tim. Thanks a lot for everything. Thanks for coming on. Everybody, get over to the Heritage Foundation and take a look at what's going on and see the history. It's amazing what's happening. So there's the rifle, the A6 raffling off. You can find it anywhere. I've been sharing it. It's all over. But there you go, a nice A6 ready to go with the Schmidt, with the whole thing. I have an A1 with a takeoff stock and an A3 with a takeoff stock. And Premier Reticles made me one of those scopes, and instead of the SSN, they put my name on it, so I don't have the SSN. But yeah, it's just an amazing thing. So thanks everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being a part of the Everyday Sniper podcast. And thanks to Tim. We appreciate you. I'm gonna end this, Tim.